Hello, Year 11, and welcome to your night before news. So what do you do now? First thing you're going to do tonight is to check the exam specification on the next slide. We've seen this specification lots of times before. You will have red, amber, greened it before, but just read it through and just double check that there aren't any red areas, so topics that you're really not sure about. Make sure you use your online revision guide or the revision booklet that you've been given and read through those last topics. The next thing I want you to do this evening is to make sure that you learn the writing structures for each question, and the way that you can do that is by look, cover, write and check. So look at the structure, then cover it up or pause the video, write it out, and then check that you've got the right structure there. Particularly thinking about the questions that you can get full marks on this paper with no own knowledge. So if you learn your structures, you'll get full marks. Topics that we focused on recently in revision and that you might want to start with. So this is by no means, the complete list. You do have to know the specification, but start with the golden years, so from 1924 to 29 in Weimar Germany. So that's women and leisure, employment, and the new culture that was developed, including new films, such as by the director Fritz Lang, one called Metropolis, and the Bauhaus movement. I also think you should look very carefully at the treatment of minorities in Nazi Germany. So in other words, the treatment of Jewish people, thinking about the boycotts in 1933, all the way through to the Nuremberg laws in 1935, and then to the removal of property in 1939. Think about the early development of the Nazi Party from 1920 to 22. So that means the 25-point program, the SA, the restructuring of the party. So Hitler's role in all of that. Make sure that you understand the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. So land, military, reparations, which means that compensation, and blame. So those are your starting points. If there are any of those that you're really not sure of, go back and read through them in the revision guides, whether that's online or the paper copy that you have or your CGP guide. And once you've done that, look at your other topics that you are not sure about. So Year 11, this is the exam specification. These are the possible things that could come up tomorrow. So again, just go through, make sure any red areas that you just read through this evening so that you have filled in any gaps in your knowledge, paying particular attention to the topics on the previous slide. Question 1 on section A of your paper is one that you will be able to get full marks on because it doesn't require any own knowledge whatsoever. It's an inference question. So when you get this question, you're going to highlight the inquiry of the question, and you're then going to highlight 2 clues that you can find in the source that tell you something about that topic. You're then going to add those clues into the booklet under the details section. So you're just going to copy them out word for word, those 2 crates. When you've done that, you're then going to start from the bottom of the page up, and you're going to make your inferences based on those details. You need to do that twice to make sure that you've answered the question fully. So the second question in section A is an explain why question. It's worth 12 marks. And again, this is exactly the same structure that you've seen in medicine and the same structure that you've seen in Elizabeth. So one reason why, using the words of the question, then a for example, this meant that, also this meant that. And remember, you're aiming for 3 developed paragraphs to get full marks in this question. So when you finish section A, you're going to move on to section B of your paper. Now section B will have one topic, the same topic for all questions in it. So the first question you're going to have to answer is, how useful are sources B and C for an inquiry into whatever the exam board has chosen? Now this is going to require you to do a little bit of preparation, just like you did in your medicine paper. The first thing you need to do is to underline the inquiry in the question so that you know what you're answering. Then what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you can identify the provenance of the source. So the provenance just means who wrote it, what is it, when it was written, because that's going to give you a clue as to why it might be useful. You're then going to highlight 2 quotes from the first source that give you clues about the inquiry. And then you're going to highlight 2 quotes from the second source that give you clues about the inquiry. And next to the clues that you've highlighted, you're going to add some own knowledge, some context to support it, so to say why it's accurate. And once you've done that, you should spend probably about 3 to 4 minutes doing that. That's your plan, because you're going to have a highlighted source, you're going to have contextual knowledge about that topic around the source to support it, and you're going to have found out who wrote it. Once you've done that, you're then ready to write up your answer, and you're going to use the frame that is on the screen in front of you. So you're going to start by saying, well, sources B and C are useful for an inquiry into whatever it might be. And you're going to say source B was written by whoever in whatever year, which makes it useful because. So think about why that author might be useful to us. What can they tell us? If it's a member of the Nazi Party, they're going to have a really good understanding of the aims of the Nazi policies. If it was a member of, for example, the public, they're going to have a really good understanding of what it was like to live in Nazi Germany under Nazi rule. So some ideas, they're a specialist, the information is likely to be accurate. They are someone, so they can give us insight into the thoughts of that group. They were an eyewitness, they can give an accurate account of the views of the time, and you can see some others up there. You're then going to move on to what it actually tells you, so to the content. So you're going to write, the source is useful because it tells us, whatever, sum it up in your own words about the particular inquiry, the particular topic. We know this because it says, or it shows, and this is the important bit, year 11, this is accurate because. So this is accurate, you're using your own knowledge to support what it says in the source. It also says or shows, and you're going to say this is accurate because. So you're going to add your own knowledge. If you don't add your own knowledge, you are capped at 1, maybe 2 marks out of 8. So you must make sure that you're explaining that the source is accurate and therefore it's useful. Okay, every single student in the year group is going to get full marks on this question, because for this question you don't use own knowledge whatsoever, so it's just about learning your sentences. So question 3C asks you to identify the main difference between the 2 interpretations. So you're simply going to write, interpretation 1 argues that. You're going to summarise it in your own words. It says, so you're going to quote. However, interpretation 2 argues that. It says. That's it. It's that simple, year 11. So what I would suggest that you do is pause the video. You're going to cover up the screen or turn away from the screen, write those sentences out and see if they are the same as the ones on the screen. Learn them, because that's going to give you your full marks. Question 3C is another question that I would expect everybody in the year group to get full marks on, because again, it does not involve using your own knowledge. This question asks you to suggest one reason why interpretations 1 and 2 give different views of a particular issue, and you need to explain your answer using both interpretations. So the first thing you are going to do is you're going to write the sentence as follows. The interpretations may differ because they give different weight to different sources. So pause the video now and see if you can write that out without looking at the screen. The interpretations may differ because they give different weight to different sources. So do that now, please. In the exam, once you've written that, you are going to open up the booklet and you're going to be able to match the sources to the interpretations. So there will be an interpretation on a particular topic, there will be a source that matches that interpretation, and you're going to draw lines to match them up. What you're then going to do is follow the writing frame that's on the screen. You've already written the interpretations may differ because they've given weight to different sources. You would then write, for example, interpretation 1 argues that. This can be supported by the detail in source either B or C. the source says. Then you're going to write interpretation 2 argues that. This can be supported by the detail in source B or C, the source says. So have a go at writing that out without looking at the screen, and then check your work by looking back at the screen. Question 3D is the big question. It's worth 16 marks plus 4 marks for spelling and grammar, so you're going to want to allow yourself 30 minutes on this question. 5 of those minutes should be spent checking through for your spellings, your punctuation, and your grammar. So you are going to be asked in this question how far you agree with either interpretation 1 or 2 about a particular inquiry or topic. And your job is to explain your answer using both of the interpretations and your own knowledge. Now, you're going to have to prepare for this question. So again, with preparation, you're going to read through the interpretation that it gives you in the question, 1 or 2. You're going to highlight anything that you think is relevant in that interpretation, so any clues that it gives you about the inquiry, and you're going to write your own knowledge around the outside of it, and what you'll have there is a plan to be able to answer the question. You're then going to circle the number of the interpretation that's mentioned in the question. So if the question says how far do you agree with interpretation 2, you would circle the number 2 and you're going to write first, because whichever interpretation is in the question is the interpretation you're going to write about first in your answer. What you're then going to do is you're going to write, this essay will mainly agree or disagree with interpretation 2, if that's the one in the question, and then you're going to follow the structure that you can see on the screen. So your final essay will have 2 parts to it. The first part will be the interpretation in the question. The second part will be the other interpretation. And then you're going to come to an overall conclusion as to how far you agree with the interpretation in the question. So what you're going to do now is pause the video, have a look at the sentence structures on the screen in front of you. You're going to turn away from your screen and see if you can write out those sentences from memory.